Looking for a guaranteed way to create content that resonates with your audience? Start a podcast, interview your ideal clients, and let them choose the topic of the interview. Because if your ideal clients care about the topic, there's a good chance the rest of your audience will care about it too. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles. I am joined today by Dan Murdoch. He is the head of global marketing at Harri. Dan, how you doing today, man?
Wonderful. Thanks, Logan. Thanks for having me here.
Very excited to have you on, Dan. We are going to be talking about a new way to approach lead scoring that has implications on balancing your inbound and outbound efforts, has implications on sales and marketing alignment. I'm really excited to dive into this today. I think you have some great takeaways for our audience. Before we do that, I would love for you to share a little bit about your background, Dan, and what you and the team at Harri are up to these days.
Yeah, certainly. So Dan Murdoch, head of global marketing for Harri. My background is sort of marked by a number of marquee companies that I've worked for to successfully exit, whether that's for IPO or successful acquisition. And I've kind of been in the last 6 or 7 years been in the world of solving problems in labor. So whether that's for freelancers and independent contractors in the context of a company I work for called Work Market, which was purchased by ADP, or working for a company called Way Up, which is solving the fundamental issues with finding and sourcing and attracting early career talent. And now working for an organization called Harri, which is at its core a software technology platform connecting top hospitality brands with the talent, solutions, and insights that they need to build and manage their teams, very simply. So whether it's talent acquisition solutions or employer branding, applicant tracking, scheduling, time and attendance communications, it's a full suite of tools to help hospitality operators, financial leaders, and HR professionals to build and manage their teams successfully. So we operate here in the United States and in the UK, but we have about 156 employees worldwide. And it's exciting. Been here for about 7 months. We are recently named to the LinkedIn top 50 top startups in the United States. So exciting news for us, but there's so much more to achieve, and just excited to be here and excited to talk about our topic, Logan. I think it's a massive opportunity for a lot of businesses.
Yeah, the inbound, outbound debate, aligning sales and marketing, lead scoring. I've heard a lot of different perspectives on this, and I think you've got a unique viewpoint on this and a methodology that you can break down for our audience that's going to deliver a ton of value. Obviously, you guys are doing great things. Noticed you guys on that LinkedIn top 50 startup list that you mentioned. So you guys are not only doing great things in the market, but continuing to grow. So before we dive in, I know we want to break down the Harmony algorithm. And I think a good place to start is talking about setting yourself up for operational excellence and kind of laying the groundwork. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts there, Dan.
Yeah, very simply, it's just you're only going to ever be as good as your data, right? We're living in a world that is completely defined by behavior and to be able to index persona, firmographic data, behavioral data in a really powerful way. Like, even for startups, you don't have to be a Fortune 500 company to have the tools and technologies at your disposal to get to that level of insight. And so I've walked into a number of different startups now where you kind of inherit the classic CRM state, which is leads and contacts are a mess. There's duplicates, there's incomplete data, there's accounts that aren't relating to people. It's just like the whole host of your typical scenarios. And it's really, really important to start right at the fundamentals of making sure that you can have the clean data that you need, the technology that allows for scalable solutions, and being able to continue to keep the integrity of those efforts. And honestly, just being able to have like the tools at the disposal of, and the enablement, more importantly, at the sales level of those who are actually interacting with the data every single day. You understand the implications and the impact of everything that they change or they update, et cetera. So, I mean, at the very core of all of this is a really good problem, which is prioritization, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if there weren't enough inbound leads and there wasn't enough like of a total addressable market for us to go after, we'd have a much larger problem ahead of us, right? Which would deem us to not be successful at what we're trying to do, which is successfully exit, as most companies are. So I think by definition, like we're solving a problem that's a good thing, which is putting ourselves in a position to be successful, whether it's for marketing or for sales, in each interaction. And the only way to do that is to start at the very beginning to make sure that your data is in a segmentable, reportable fashion so that you can drive those insights. But Logan, you can tell me which direction you want me to take this in, but I'm happy to sort of start about, we've thought about lead scoring in a one-dimensional way for a very long time, which is, in the traditional sense, behavioral score, right? I bring in a marketing automation platform, right? Like a Pardot or a Silverpop, which is now IBM Marketing Cloud, Eloqua, whatever it might be, Marketo. But the problem is that you're only solving one part of the problem, right? Mm-hmm. And that one part of the problem is, out of everybody that I'm marketing to or I can sell to, et cetera, how much are they actually engaging with my brand? Like, there are so many other parts of the problem you're trying to solve in order to maximize the output of either your marketing efforts, right, from an outbound email marketing or content engagement perspective, or for an outbound call from an SDR.
Yeah. So the thing I was going to mention there that is coming out of what you're saying, Dan, is, traditional lead scoring makes sense. We're trying to use the data, which is, what you recommend, starting with your data and moving on from there. But what you're saying is basically, it's very one dimensional, and we need to create more nuance around that, right?
Exactly. Right. And the only way to get that is to extrapolate the rest of the variables that make someone a great fit, right? When we think about fit, we need to think about it more than just have they engage with our brand in a meaningful way or not, right? Did they go to a webinar? Did they download a piece of content? Did they request a demo? We all understand like the conversion rates that sit between like marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads. And the way to improve that is for us to have a better understanding of the DNA of those who are actually engaging. So I've kind of bucketed this in a couple of different categories, right? So we have brand engagement, which is still very important, right? Is somebody actually engaging with what we're sending in a meaningful way? Mm-hmm. But two other things that I think are really, really compelling, right? Which is number two. So number one is brand engagement. Number two is account fit, right? Across the entire universe of who we can sell and market to, do they fit within on a scale from 0 to 100? At the higher end of that tier of being a best fit customer, right? Mm-hmm. And I can break down into some more of the components there in a moment. But the last thing is contactability, right? In a moment in time, what is the likelihood of my ability to actually get in touch with that person? And there's a lot of things that factor into that. Mm-hmm. But the moral of the story is that I consider solving the problem of who should we be calling in this very moment for an SDR, or who should we be marketing to in this very moment, as a combination of brand engagement, account fit, and contactability.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're blending your lead-based marketing with brand engagement, and your account-based marketing looking at account fit, but even going further than that into the contactability. So break it down for us a little bit further, Dan. How do these three work together? Where do you start trying to build this model where you're looking at your leads, not in just a one-dimensional factor, but you're combining the three aspects: brand engagement, account fit, and contactability at the same time?
Absolutely. So I think like everyone here should have a really good sense, or any of the listeners, for the marketing automation platforms that are out there, right? I think that's like the prerequisite. That's been the standard of excellence in terms of what you're starting with creating your marketing technology stack, something that can measure the engagement from a lead scoring perspective on the way that they're behaving on the site, from clicks to downloads to form conversions, all the things, email opens, all the things that, are sort of sit under the umbrella of marketing automation, you can measure, right? And there's lots of integration and tons of players out there that can be used in the pursuit of that. And honestly, my opinion of all of them are that they're kind of really all on the same plane, depending on your use case. But the reality is like your ability to implement a marketing automation platform is pretty standard now. Lots of partners out there can help you and make sure that you can actually refine and customize that to your business, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody has an opinion as to how you build lead scoring. I think it's really something that's always an ever-evolving model, and there isn't sort of a one-size-that-fits-all scenario, with the exception of, I think, establishing discipline and an SLA between marketing and sales to come up with a working definition, a collaborative definition of what a marketing qualified lead means, right, from that perspective, right? What does that threshold look like? So that's the brand engagement side of this algorithm, if you will. The account fit side is a little, I think, less understood, right? I think like account-based marketing has now been talked about in excess, I would say, for the last probably 2 or 3 years. And everybody sort of understands what are the components of that. But I think it's still lost on folks as to exactly what is the technology that you implement in order to get to that score, right? So breaking it down just a step further, a little more elementary or fundamental, an account fit score, an account-based ABM marketing technology, a predictive technology, which is somewhat more commonly termed as, is a mechanism by which you can layer it into your existing CRM data. Right? So what you have in Salesforce, Sugar CRM, whatever you might be using. And what it's doing is it lands inside of your system, and it's looking to create a model against all the positive and negative attributes that have happened over the history of your business or the history of your CRM to define and to build a profile of the ideal customer fit, right? So it's looking at all types of data points, everything from firmographic data, for where it's located, number of employees, its industry types, all the traditional stuff, but it's also looking at much bigger data, right? What does their SEO footprint look like? Are they experiencing growth? Are there other sort of like macroeconomic things that are happening in the industry that would deem that person have a richer profile of which you can then compare that against the rest of the world on. And what it then does is the next step, once it creates that model, once it creates that profile, it compares it to the rest of the world. And by the rest of the world, I mean not only what's already in your CRM, but also other opportunities. And so it usually ranks it on a scale from 0 to 100. The higher the score, the more likely, right, the actual account is to buy from you. And that's how you start scraping up that score. And that score is usually rendered through a specific field at the account level in Salesforce. I'll talk to it from the perspective of Salesforce, in Salesforce, that you can then index and report on, and you can stack rank, right? So it's important that numerically, like we're kind of getting into a more of a math lesson, but the brand engagement score, what you're pulling from Pardot, or you're pulling from Marketo, or you're pulling from your marketing automation platform is on a somewhat similar scale. Like you're not going to have lead scores in the thousands, right? Which would sort of stain, right? Or influence the algorithm in a proper way. You want to make sure that's balanced. But the account fit score is 0 to 100, right? So that's a number that you can index. So that's where that number.
Today's growth story is about Lilliard Insurance Agency. The biggest challenge for one of their B2B sales agents was finding contact information for businesses that fit his target profile. He was running out of time to meet his monthly sales goal, so he turned to simple internet searches. Too often, the information he found was old and unreliable. He was spending too much valuable selling time looking for email addresses and phone numbers that turned out to be inaccurate and unusable anyway. The rep, Sam Hoover, heard about Sales Genie from his manager, and that's when everything changed. Sam started using Sales Genie's powerful database access to build targeted lists and get the contact information he needed to work new leads. He was able to profile his best customers to find prospects that looked just like them. He even used Sales Genie to find ways to reach them with direct mail, email, and online marketing campaigns. Sam immediately increased his monthly sales production by 200%. Can Sales Genie help you drive similar sales results? Probably. Head over to salesgenie.com/B2B to get a demo and a free customer analysis. All right, let's get back into the show. And then, we've talked about brand engagement, account fit. Now tell us about how you try to measure contactability and how that fits in to this algorithm. And then we'll get into how do they all fit together to give you, a more three-dimensional lead score.
Totally. So contactability, just to redefine, right, is what is the probability that we can have a meaningful conversation with a human being on outreach at a given period of time, right? So the components that make that up, or what sort of defines contactability, right now, right, there's a hurricane that just went through Florida, right? Mm-hmm. There is algorithms that are indexing the fact that there is a lower probability of us being able to reach out to a person in that geographic region because there is a act of God happening, right? And so that makes sense, right? There's a hurricane in Florida, people most likely aren't at work. They're probably evacuating or they're not at work, right? So that's just one example, but there's tons and tons of big data out there that is suggestive of, if the Super Bowl was hosted in Dallas, Texas on a Tuesday, people most likely in Dallas, Texas are not necessarily at work at 9 a.m. the next day. There's data to suggest that there is other ways to understand if somebody's going to be the likelihood of them being there. There's another component of contactability, which is increasing the likelihood of somebody picking up with local presence, so localized numbers with area codes, right? So there is tons of data to suggest that if I receive a phone call from a similar area code to mine, an exact match, if you will, I am more likely to pick that up because, well, first and foremost, I recognize it, right, as being something. It could be one of my friends, it could be a doctor's office, it could be anything, right? And in some instance, the example that was given to me once was, it could be my kid's school calling me about my kid being sick or being in trouble or something like that. But, moral of the story is that between what is defined as what we talked about previously, the neurolytics side, which is being able to understand weather, traffic, news, infinite data points, cross-reference with location to understand the likelihood of somebody picking up, combined with local presence, so the ability to appear like you're calling from a local number. The combination of those two things are pretty powerful, right? And so that renders back out, again, on a likelihood from a scale of 0 to 100. And the technology that I've used to actually create this score is InsideSales.com. And for those of you who are not familiar with InsideSales.com, they're a sales acceleration technology that are headquartered in Utah. They've been around for many years now. They're really, in my opinion, the leader in this space. Gabe Larson is one of the VPs of growth there and has been such an amazing subject matter expert on this front. And it's just been exciting to watch them grow and have such an amazing valuation. But it's such a powerful technology that empowers you to do that amongst a myriad of other things. But I feel like that's one of their core value propositions as it relates to building this contactability score.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to link to the blog post where you break this down, and I think the mathematics will be easier for listeners to digest. Taking a look at there, you've got some visuals, but tell us a little bit briefly, Dan, as we kind of wrap up here, just how you weight these and how you bring them together and some of the results that you guys have seen, because I think that would be good to speak to, and then we'll have a resource for folks to kind of look into it. We don't want to go into a full calculus lesson here, but I think you can speak to a little bit of how you weight them, how you put them together in this algorithm.
The ironic part of all this is that I was a terrible math student. So the fact that I've kind of come up with this algorithm is, trust me, no more surprising to anyone but me. But anyway, okay, so to break it down, right? So we have these three scores, right? Just to recap, we have the behavioral score, we have the account fit score, and we have the contactability score. I have determined over sort of testing this for, well over 2 years now, that there needs to be a greater emphasis or a greater weighting, if you will, right? When multiplying all three of these together to render the Harmony metric or the Harmony score, that account fit has to come number one. And I have weighted it at 50% of the 100% that we're going to accomplish across this number. Okay. Because the reality is at the first and foremost, it's most important that we're selling to someone that fits. We have, proof of concepts. We have referenceable clients. Like, it just makes sense, right? We're selling to people that we know we can sell to. It's a sweet spot. We have repeatability in it and predictability in it. I won't go too much deeper than that, but that just makes sense, right? To everybody. right? So the right company, first and foremost. Secondary to that, it's about behavioral, right? Behavioral fit. The lead scoring that we've traditionally gotten from marketing automation platforms, right? And that's been weighted at 35%, right? So we've gone from 50% at the account fit score and 35% at the behavioral score. And that's just, and I think it's going to be unique to every company, but that's just what's worked best for me in the context of a B2B software, enterprise software play. And it's right, the right company with the right engaged person, right? The right engaged person, and then at the right time, right? The contactability, 15% on the latter end of this equation. So again, you've now created this construct for, am I speaking to somebody at the right company with the right person at the right time? And that's effectively the algorithm.
Yep. And that's hitting on the three goals of every B2B sales and marketing person, just wrapped up into one sentence. I love it. Well, Dan, tell us a little bit about some of the results you guys have seen with this real quick, just as we wrap up the conversation.
Yeah, I think like there's a lot of lead time that you got to put into this in terms of the implementation of the tools, right? So there's that in terms of anticipatory timelines for when you can start seeing results. But once it's all together and you have a critical mass of data, right? We go back to the account fit score side. You need to have a significant amount of, I would say, at least a year's worth of historical data to create that profile, right? So just thinking from that perspective, all things aside, it's instant gratification once you launch it. And I've seen, and this is across the board, right? So this hits a couple of key areas. One, what is our call to appointment ratio from an outbound and inbound sales perspective in sales development, depending on your order of operations and how you've built your operating model for how your teams go after leads. So there's that, right? So we've seen a massive lift there, anywhere between 200 and 275%. Month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year. And so there's that, but also just, I think, talking about total impact to the pipeline, it was a 293% lift in CMRR that we saw, and it's sustained as compared to the relevant comparison of the timeline before that, which was quarter over quarter, year over year. So it's just massive optimization across the board with the things that you already have, contingent on making sure that you're delivering on great marketing programs that are highly contextualized, hyper-personalized, and you have a sales development team that's really bought in on it and managing their time and their energy really, really effectively with this powerful engine behind them. So as long as they fully understand it, you can definitely yield those similar types of results.
I love the detail that you're sharing there, Dan. And I think this framework, this algorithm is going to help a lot of marketers out there, as you mentioned, solve a problem that's good to have. It's good to have enough leads that you need to start prioritizing them. But when you can, the results can speak for themselves as they have, as you mentioned there. Well, Dan, if anybody listening to this would like to stay connected with you, obviously you've got a lot of great experience and ideas to share. What's the best way for them to reach out or stay connected with you?
Yeah, certainly. So happy for anyone to reach out to me at dan@harri.com, HARRI. And then I have a website, I've got a blog. It's dan-murdoch.com, and happy to engage with anybody. There's a form there if you want to contact me there, or if you want to email me directly, that's totally great. But if you want to check out the site, we're going to be launching a new site very shortly for Harri, which is going to be very exciting. But so many different ways to connect. Happy to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. Please feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Dan, thanks so much for being on the show, man.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Logan. This is amazing.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know, all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.